Call to order the Board of Education meeting for February 14th at 5 p.m. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to step out of the regular agenda for just a second and introduce our new Public Information Officer, Mrs. Kristen Brooks. Would you please come over and say a few words for us? Over there.
Hi, I'm Kristen Brooks. This is my second day here at the county, and I'm super excited to be here and to be a part of y'all.
Thank you very much, and we're glad to have you. Sorry to put you on the spot, but and we got a full house too. A lot of old familiar faces here. Reading of the closed session summary for executive session January 10th.
The Allegany County Board of Education met in closed session at 3:30 p.m. on January 10th, 2023 here at Central Office. The purpose of the closed session was to consult with legal counsel, discuss personnel matters, and to engage in administrative function. All 5 board members voted to go into executive session, which was held under the provisions of the General Provisions Article, Section 305B 1 and 7. The topics discussed were non-renewal of teaching certificate, letter of intent retirement, a public information officer position, update on legal issue with parent, and a 4-205C appeal from parent.
Next thing on the agenda is the consent agenda. I need a motion for the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Bond, second by Crystal Bender. All those in favor? Motion passed. Next on the agenda is superintendent's report. Mr. Blank.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Wetzel, who has a presentation, special presentation. So let me pause and give you time to approach.
Thank you, Superintendent Blank. The purpose of the presentation is to recognize the graduating class of 1956. That was the first integrated graduation of Allegany County Public Schools. It was brought to our attention by Mr. Peck, and we thought it would be appropriate to bring that forward to the Board of Education. And I would first like to congratulate and commend the African American graduates of 1956, Fort Hill High School. What the graduates accomplished was marked a milestone in local history because it ended 170 years of segregated schools in Allegany County. The journey to integration was a long one. It was filled with many obstacles, and the obstacles began literally with trying to establish schoolhouses. The first, and Cumberland hosted a number of schools. I'll just briefly mention the location. The first schoolhouse was called Mary Hoy, located on Independence Street. The second was Mechanic Street School, located on North Mechanic Street. And the third, of course, was Carver, which was by far the largest exclusively black school in Allegany County. In addition to those locations, however, classes were held in other buildings, and this is part of the story that's gotten lost over time. Black clergy, particularly the Baptist Church, persistently approached the school commissioners for facilities for black students in Allegany County, petitioned, show up at board meetings, request after request. And through their efforts, classes were held in schools. Ebenezer Church, not too far from here on Cumberland Street, and the AME Church on Frederick Street hosted classes for a number of years. And I think that story needs to be incorporated into the narrative on local history. In addition to that, we recently uncovered a long-forgotten black school located, let's see, directly behind us on Green Street. It was used by black students from 1888 to 1890. The school was called Green Street Public School. In addition to the Cumberland schools, Frostburg had Lincoln School, which interestingly was located in 3 separate locations. It was moved for the purpose of expanding Frostburg State University. Westernport had a black school as well. Again, it was through the effort of a minister who petitioned the board 3 consecutive years. We need a school, we need a school. He offered the Brown Memorial AME Church as a facility. Classes were held there for a number of years until 1896, when a contract was let on a school to be built on the hill above Westernport. And just a few weeks ago, we were able to locate that building. It's still standing. It's now a private residence. Lonacone had a school from about 1897 up to 1904. It was located directly behind the Presbyterian Church in Lonacone. That's the church that you see on Main Street as you go through Lonacone. A manuscript has been made available to all the board members. Please make it available to the public. For anybody interested now or in the future, I hope it's beneficial. And I'd like to point out also that Mr. Feldstein has done a considerable amount of work on African American history that's posted on Wilbur. Most all of it. Yeah, and I'd like to recognize Dr. Brown too, because he's the one that did a lot of work to bring this this evening to being. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. Blank, President Farrell, and board members. I am Dr. Sarah Welsh, the Assistant Supervisor of Student Services, and under that umbrella coordinate our equity and student outcomes. So I am here to present the certificate of recognition to Mr. William Peck, who is with us this evening in the audience. Thank you so much, Mr. Peck.
This is for historical posterity. Thank you.
Thanks. It's an honor to have you here tonight.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
for being here.
Thank you very much.
Is it okay if I get a picture with you?
Sure. I don't, she's the real person. I don't want. She's the real person.
Would you like to say, Mr. Pecker?
I'd like to.
You're totally welcome to. Go right ahead.
It's difficult to put into words what I feel tonight. I explained to my grandson and my sons in 55 and 56, if you were a black student in Cumberland, Allegany County, no matter where you lived, you walked to school. Kids that were in Frostburg, surrounding areas, their parents would bring them down to Cumberland to stay with friends and family for the week because they couldn't transport them back and forth to school. There were many people that were opposed to us going to school. I'm sure you've seen the news from those days. Marshals had to walk little kids to school through jeering crowds. Many people told us we were going to destroy the educational system in this city if we were allowed in the schools. My family was concerned for my safety. going to the schools. My mother told me, growing up on Central Avenue, we all loved to fight, white and black, but we're all good friends. She told me no matter what they said to you, no matter what anyone done to you, you can't respond. They're looking for an excuse for you not to be in their school. Some of my white friends on Central Avenue and Pine Avenue that I grew up with, we didn't know why we couldn't go to the same school. We were just friends, in and out of each other's houses. And they told me, when they start using the N-word, when they start all this, don't you respond. We'll have your back. When I stand here and I think back to what we had to go through, the only textbooks we got at Carver were ones that the white schools were discarding. When the parents here in Cumberland were taking kids in from Frostburg, surrounding areas, spend the night, many of them spent money on their own books to teach the kids at home. When we first got into the school, there were teachers that didn't believe black and white students should share the stage together, shouldn't dance together, shouldn't play music together. I remember Fort Hill, my cousin was dancing. The teacher tried to close the curtains. Didn't want to see that. But what all the bigots, the haters didn't count on were that the white and black students were going to become friends. And it happened at almost all the schools, Bell, Fort Hill, Allegany. Became friends. Many members of my class in 1956 were still friends. I graduated and went on to join Metropolitan Police Department. The reason I went to D.C., I applied for the police department here. It's civil service list. Was number one on the list. And watched as white applicants way below me on the list were hard. Some of the black leaders want to protest. John Womack, Brumries. But I always leaned on my faith. And I saw an advertisement in the Washington Post for police officers in D.C. And when I face a decision, the first thing I do is pray. And I prayed. And God said, go to D.C. I went to D.C. and it was still God working. When I first went to D.C., when you're sworn in as a police officer, you're sworn on Friday. Monday morning, you go to the police academy. That Friday, I met with two officials, two men in suit and ties, never identified themselves. And they questioned me about my knowledge of the numbers racket. Some of you older people here know how big numbers were here in Cumberland, Allegany, $1 million worth of profits. Every little black kid, white kid knew all about the numbers racket. How to play double digits, put 10 cents on two numbers, and they questioned me about that. Then they told me, you're not going to the police academy. We're going to put you in an undercover assignment. And I said, I know nothing about D.C. I don't know anything about criminal law. Only weapon I've ever fired was in the Army. They said, doesn't matter. And from that day, for over a year, I worked undercover assignments over and over. I never got to the police academy until over a year later. I was assigned to the 11th precinct, Southeast D.C. I never set foot in the precinct for over a year. But I also joined a department that black officers couldn't ride in patrol cars. All black officers were assigned to a footbeat. The reasoning being a white person would not accept a black officer stopping them for a traffic violation or coming into their home. But again, my mother and my pastor you have to fight through this. You can't fight bigotry and discrimination from the outside. You got to fight inside. Many of my friends left, joined Park Police, other agencies. But many of us stayed. And I don't want to dwell on this too long, but I just wanted to have you understand my character, how my character was built. And we stayed and fought. There's policy on the Metropolitan Police Department that no matter how cold it got, you still walked your beat. All you had was a long overcoat, no cell phones, no radios. At each end of the beat, there's a small phone box that you called in to check in every hour. Then as we started to protest, the powers that be said that the white officers could ride us in the patrol cars for 20 or 25 minutes as the temperature dropped down below 20. We fought that. There were so few black officers above the rank of sergeant that we all knew each other. So we formed study groups when it was time for promotion. Then the powers that be said that was illegal. We took that to court. We won that. Then they had a policy, never written down, that no matter what you got on the promotional exam, if one white sergeant, and I can quote you verbatim for what my assessments were, Officer Peck is an excellent police officer, but he's not supervisory material. And we fought that. But through my career, young black kid from Central Avenue, I got to meet 2 presidents, shake their hands, get commendations. I got commendations from 2 secretaries of state, director of diplomatic security, 2 U.S. attorneys. This was the path God put me on. When I retired and came back here, we still cared about Fort Hill. There's a group of young thugs riding around pickup trucks with Confederate flags, harassing the black students walking to Fort Hill. So a group of us got together, Joe Jacqueline Cooper, Vicki Williams, and we formed what we called Concerned Parents of Fort Hill. And we tried meeting with officials at Fort Hill, the police department. And many of the young men, we would follow the young black kids going to Fort Hill to make sure they were safe. And we decided early on that we wouldn't let outside organizations come in and join us. We want to be strictly parents and grandparents of students at Fort Hill. And then Washington Post picked up a story, the black family fled Cumberland in fear of the safety for their kids walking to Fort Hill. When that broke in the newspapers, we got calls from organizations all over. We told them, no, this is our fight. And we met with officials at Fort Hill, other school officials. And shortly after that, a black school from Baltimore playing Fort Hill. And the coach took his team off his field because he said Fort Hill players were using the N-word and other racial slurs. But we knew the coach well, we knew the people, we knew the kids well. We still were standing up, black parents, against these allegations. And we decided to present a petition to the Board of Education to ban the Confederate flag, swastika, and other hate symbols from Fort Hill. And the night or the evening I was to sit before the board and make my presentation, one of the presidents of a civic group here in Cumberland showed up with his young son dressed in a Confederate uniform. He also brought with him a contingent of
Unknown caller.
Sons of the Confederacy from Virginia. And I almost lost my temper. All my training, everything I've been taught not to lose my temper, not to respond with emotions, I almost lost it. But I gathered myself and I sat before the board and I read my petition. The attorney for the board at that time questioned me that the courts would not uphold a ban on a Confederate flag. But I've been trained to do all my career. I came with facts. Court decisions from Anne Arundel County, Cecil County, where the courts have upheld the ban. And it's funny how you remember little things. And when I finished reading all those court decisions, the attorney for the board leaned back and found something up in the ceiling to look at. We fought so hard to bring people together. We tried to keep it local. If we could sit down and talk to each other, discuss our differences, that's the only way we can survive. And then, when the Fort Hill Alumni Committee notified me they were nominating me for induction into the Fort Hill Hall of Fame. This is an all-white committee. In this atmosphere today where even the mention of black history can get a teacher transferred forward or a principal transferred or forward, they still had the integrity and the moral fiber to nominate me for the Fort Hill Hall of Fame. I didn't play football because I couldn't play football. Didn't play basketball, wasn't allowed to play basketball. But they still nominated me. To get nominated, of the 12 members, you have to have 9 people that nominate you. And they still stood and nominated me. The last football game before the induction ceremony at Fort Hill, they had all 4 of the people being inducted into the Hall of Fame, walk out on the football field. I walked out on the field, and I got emotional. I was standing on the 50-yard line of a school that so many people, the names, the insults, so many people were against us. And I'm standing on the 50-yard line of this school, being prepared to be inducted into the Hall of Fame of that very same school. But it's the same thing I've taught my sons, my grandsons. I told them, you can't live your life in darkness. Don't live on the dark side. Look for the beauty in life. Look for the joys in life. If you stay on the dark side, you'll become a hateful, bigoted person, just like the person you're fighting against. And I quoted, my kids have heard all this, Malcolm X, and Malcolm X made a controversial subject. He said, all black men are not your brothers, and all white men are not your enemies. And I've seen so many joyful things. I've worked and met with Cumberland City Police Department numerous times. I've met with the Sheriff Department numerous times discussing issues. Many times I had to go by myself because organizations wouldn't go with me. The more I spoke out, the more people turned away from me. But in my Bible says, you speak my name. If you see an injustice or wrong, and you stand up and speak out against this, your friends will turn your back on you. Some family members will turn your back on you. But there's a special place for you in heaven. But when you stand up and you speak out, many people are going to turn against you. My wife, and only my family knows this, filed a discrimination complaint against the Brandenburg Center. And I won't go into the details with that, but when she did so, it created an uproar. No black person had ever filed a discrimination complaint with the state from Allegany County or Cumberland. I had her document everything that was being said and done to her. And I presented it in a package and sent it to the then governor. The governor called the director of mental health, hygiene, informed him of her complaint. But what he didn't tell the director that he had formed an investigative group to investigate my wife's complaints. The situations were so tense. Our first meeting was at State Police Barracks in Hagerstown. Well, when the director of mental health and hygiene called the Brandenburg Center, of course, they said, of course we're not. But then the director of the Brandenburg Center called an assembly of all the employees and told them they were all going to lose their jobs, and pointed to my wife because of Roxanne Peck. Now, these are people that have mortgages, families to support. The phone call started. They were going to set my house on fire, hopefully with my family inside of it. The investigators took it so seriously they notified the FBI. None of this was in the Cumberland news media. They put my wife on paid administrative leave for 21 days because they couldn't protect her safely. But I'll move on from that because you ever want to sit down and I'll talk to you about that one in detail. But I want to talk about not living on the dark side, look for the joys. Lavelle Methodist Church has a youth group. They're not required to belong to the church, not at all, black or white. When my daughter Roxanne came up for my grandson Robert's graduation, she went up Route 40. Lavelle Methodist had large photographs of all the seniors. And she went back to her church in Atlanta, Georgia, telling them about Lavelle Methodist Church. The people say, how come you're not bitter? I spoke to a class at Westside Elementary School a few years ago during Black History Month. And that was a question I got asked from several, why aren't you bitter? I said, because I believe things will get better. Believe in your God, believe in your faith. No matter what they say, or what they do, you can survive it. My wife and I had a saying when we had all these battles with the state. They said, keep fighting. Keep fighting. Never give up. It's hard in this day and age when you see what's being said about critical race theory. How much damage is being done to the white students in the classes. But none of these people say what's being done to the Jewish students, to the black students. They don't care. They don't care. So I don't want to stand here and take up this whole meeting. But I just want to say, unless we can come together, black, white, Jewish, Muslim, we're American citizens. We're citizens of this country. I was born in Cumberland. I'm an American citizen. You don't need to put Afro-American in front of my name. That's making me feel less than a citizen. I'm a citizen. But if we can come together, sit down and just talk to each other instead of hate, yelling, lying, just look each other straight in the eye and express ourselves. Only then do we have a chance. And I pray that God has mercy on this country. Thank you.
Ms. Bender?
I have a proclamation for African American History Month. Allegheny County Board of Education proclamation, whereas February 2023 has been designated African American History Month, and the Board of Education of Allegheny County is honored to present this proclamation on this 14th day of February 2023 to the Allegheny Chapter 7007 of the NAACP. And whereas we are committed to honoring African Americans and recognizing their contributions and accomplishments to the history and the culture of the United States, and whereas this board believes it is appropriate to reflect this commitment in a proper and concrete fashion, as is an important month of remembrance, recognition, and education. And whereas it is the desire of the Board of Education that African Americans should be made aware of their appreciation And whereas it is appropriate to call on all employees and citizens of Alleghany County for their support in this effort, as well as raising awareness about issues still present in society. And whereas we do recognize that the school systems are an integral part of our social and civic institutions, therefore, the Board of Education of Alleghany County does hereby proclaim February 2023 as African American History Month. Furthermore, we do urge our fellow citizens to join us in actively expressing gratitude to African Americans during this month, in witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Alleghany County, Maryland, to be affixed hereto this 14th day of February 2023, signed by Robert Farrell, President of the Board, and Jeffrey Blank, Superintendent of Schools. And I believe Dr. Welsh is accepting the proclamation.
Yes, thank you so much. I will make sure that Mrs. Tiffany Fisher, the president of the NAACP, receives this. She was not able to be here this evening, so I will make sure that she gets this on behalf of ACPS. Thank you so much.
Dr. Bond?
I have a proclamation here for school counselors, National School Counseling Week. I'd like to just say first that it's kind of an honor to do this since my daughter's a school counselor in Las Vegas. So whereas February 6th to 10th, 2023 has been designated National School Counseling Week, school counselors helping students dream big by the American School Counselor Association. Whereas school counselors are employed in public schools to help students achieve success in school, reach their full potential, and set realistic goals for themselves. And whereas school counselors are actively committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents as these traits relate to the career awareness and development. And whereas school counselors help parents focus on ways to further the educational, personal, and social growth of their children. And whereas school counselors work with teachers and other educators to warrant counseling programs meet school goals, and whereas school counselors seek to identify and utilize community resources that can enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become productive members of society, and whereas school counselors play a vital role in helping to ensure students learn to have respectful conversations in a safe school environment. Therefore, we, the Board of Education of Alleghany County, endorses the observance of National School Counseling Week, February 6th to 10th, 2023. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Alleghany County, Maryland, to be affixed hereto to this 14th day of February 2023. Signed, Robert Farrell, Board of Education President, and Jeffrey Blank, Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you so much on behalf of our school counseling team, our student services group that works so hard and is such a really fantastic example of dedication to our students and families and community partners. I accept this on behalf of all of our folks, and I will make sure that they know that they are appreciated and loved a little extra this month.
Thank you, Dr. Well. Next on the agenda is a proclamation recognizing Career and Technical Education Month. Mr. King? Tammy, I believe you have the...
I'm over here now.
Okay.
I got moved. Okay. Whereas February 2023 has been designated Career and Technical Education Month by the Association for Career and Technical Education, and whereas Career and Technical Education offers students the opportunity to gain the academic, technical, and employable skills necessary for true career readiness, and whereas students will participate in authentic, meaningful experiences that improve the quality of their education and increase their engagement and achievement, and whereas providing students with career exploration opportunities earlier in their educational experience, which enables them to make informed and beneficial decisions about their academic coursework and pursue established programs of study and career pathways, and whereas leaders from business and industry nationwide report increasing challenges related to addressing the skills gap and connecting qualified professionals with available careers in critical and growing CTE-related fields, including healthcare, energy, advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity, and information technology. And whereas preparing students for these and other fulfilling careers by offering integrated programs of study that link secondary and post-secondary education and lead to attainment of an industry-recognized credential. And whereas career and technical education programs ensure that employers have access to qualified and thriving workforce, ensuring America is a strong and competitive economy. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Education of Allegany County, do hereby proclaim February 2023 as Career and Technical Education Month. Celebrate today, own tomorrow. Allegany County Public Schools urge all citizens to become familiar with the services and benefits offered by the career and technical education programs in this community and to support and participate in these programs to enhance their individual work skills and productivity. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Allegany County, Maryland to be affixed hereto this 14th day of February 2023, signed by Robert Farrell, President, Board of Education, and Jeffrey Blake, Superintendent of Schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you and good evening. On behalf of the faculty and staff at the Career Center, I proudly accept this proclamation from the Board of Education recognizing the Career Center during CTE month. I also want to thank you all and everybody within this Board of Education building for your continued support of our school and our programs. This Thursday, we will be having an open house at the Career Center from 4 to 6 p.m. Anybody, public, whether you're interested in possibly coming to the Career Center or just want to come and see what the Career Center has to offer, you can attend our open house. Again, that's this Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Appreciate you coming and telling us about that. It's good to know. It's good for us to know those things, and we're all proud of the job you're doing at the Career Center and the faculty and students out there. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the blueprint update. Dr. May? I just want to let everybody know we're going to continue on with this, but if anybody wants to be excused, they're more than welcome. But just to let you know.
Okay, good evening. Happy Valentine's Day. So Mr. Blank has asked me to come and give one final summary on our proposed draft plan for Blueprint for Maryland's future implementation plan. So tonight I'm just going to run through a summary. We do have our pillar chairs here, so we're open for questions, comments, and thoughts, okay? On the screen, you will see our ACPS pillar team chairs. I'd really be remiss if I didn't take just one moment to thank the pillar chairs that are listed on this slide for their hard work. They have dedicated hours and hours and hours in the last few weeks working, researching, reading, developing their teams, facilitating conversations, collaborating with our partners, and really summarizing and proposing a plan. So they have put hours in, and I do appreciate all their hard work. And I also appreciate Mr. Blank's guidance and oversight throughout this process. So Pillar 1, once again, for early childhood education, Mrs. Jackie Enright is our pillar chair. For Pillar 2, high quality and diverse teachers and leaders, Mr. Steve Wilson, our pillar chair. Pillar 3, career and college readiness, Dr. Kim Coball. Pillar 4, resources to ensure all students are successful, Mrs. Debbie Matheny. And Pillar 5, the governance and accountability pillar, was Mr. Larry McKenzie. Just a couple moments on the timeline. We need to remember that the Blueprint for Maryland's future legislation encompasses a 10-year plan that takes us through 2032. In which LEAs must develop a comprehensive plan to address the mandates in the 5 pillars identified in the law. Submission or Phase 1, which is due on March 15th, 2023, and which we will be summarizing this evening, is the first phase of the plan. It does include a historical data dive with supporting evidence from school years 21-22 through 23-24. This really does paint a picture of our system's current demographics, trends, our instructional framework, and the allocations of the blueprint funding we have received. Submission 2, due on March 15th, 2024, is going to be a 3-year plan that requires forward thinking with our partners. This plan has ideas and strategies that we intend to implement to meet the minimum requirements of the blueprint legislation. It will take us through school year 26-27, and it will require stakeholder engagement. Submission 3 is to be determined. It is the third phase in the last submission that takes us to 2032. Just a quick sequence of timeline. In 2021, the system did appoint a blueprint coordinator as the legislation required. That is me, and I did sit in professional development and technical assistance, many, many hours of that. On 12/1/2022, I believe I was here, and we talked about the AIB and the MSDE presenting the final blueprint plan and the template. From that time to the current time, the chairs and the teams have participated in technical assistance, in workshops, and in internal planning meetings to look at the law and decide how our system was responding. Also, we had several public engagement opportunities. We have worked with our CTE, LAC. We have presented to CSAC, to our administrators and supervisors. We have been talking with the county, and we have been working with our higher education partners at ACM and Frostburg State. Tonight, we're here to present the summary to you. After that, we will spend the next 3 or so weeks editing, looking for quality assurance pieces, and writing the final plan. Next Friday on 2/24, our team's meeting with the MSDE individually to get input and recommendations for our final plan. And then on March 15th, we will submit. Let's take a quick look at Pillar 1 is early childhood education. And we have moved now from what the law requires to what ACPS is doing. So we will continue to expand access to full-day programs for Tier 1, 3 and 4-year-old children, and Tier 2, 4-year-old children with priority to underserved populations by collaborating with Head Start and, in the future, any Maryland State pre-kindergarten funded private providers. For next year, we have increased to 3 half-day 4-year-old programs in our system that are full day. We will collaborate with private providers to inform them of blueprint funding and requirements and work towards implementing a high-quality mixed delivery pre-kindergarten system that includes public and private slots available to families. And to date, Mrs. Enright and her team have hosted informational sessions, including in professional development, and offered assistance with grant applications. We will develop a system for unified and common enrollment for pre-K across the county and all programs. Currently, we are collaborating with Head Start to be available at schools during registration and co-host marketing events for registration. We will explore the needs to expand services for families through Judy Center expansions. And we will assist with training and professional development for staff, including support for the Child Development Associate, certification, and options for gaining an AA degree. To date, 2 ACPS instructional assistants are going through this CDA process. 2 are going to ACM for their AA degree through our Grow Your Own staff funding. Mrs. Enright is with us if anybody has any questions for Pillar 1, early childhood education. Pillar 2, high quality and diverse teachers and leaders. ACPS will employ strategies to increase the diversity of our teaching staff in regards to race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status. We will provide information and resources to current teachers for the purposes of increasing the number of national board certified teachers in our system. We will collaborate with institutes of higher learning to build a pipeline of potential teaching candidates to increase the diversity of our teaching staff and the number of applicants in hard-to-fill areas. Currently, ACPS has already met the mandated 10% salary increase for June 30th, 2024, and we are on course to meet the $60,000 starting salary for July 1st, 2026. Mr. Wilson is with us if you have questions for Pillar 2, high quality and diverse teachers and leaders. Pillar 3, career and college readiness. ACPS will create a 9th grade tracker system to measure progress towards on-time graduation and report that progress annually to the Maryland State Department of Education. We will design student support pathways to include individualized services, support, instruction, and reassessment that ensures students will meet the CCR standard prior to graduation. We will design programs that provide post-CCR pathways to all CCR students in grades 11 and 12 so that students earn early college credits and career and technical education credentials at no cost to the student or the student's parents, including the cost of any fees. We will design activities that the school system will use to ensure all middle and high school students are aware of the post-CCR pathways, including career counseling, and provide opportunities for students to explore and engage in college and career activities that will help them choose the best CCR pathway for them. And finally, we will offer a robust set of CTE programs that allow students to earn an industry-recognized credential or post-secondary certificate, or complete the high school level of a registered apprenticeship program approved by the Division of Workforce Development and Adult Learning within the Maryland Department of Labor. Dr. Caldwell is with us this evening if you have questions on Pillar 3, college and career readiness. Pillar 4, resources to ensure all students are successful. ACPS will utilize interpreters to complete an interest survey outreach assessment with English learner families that will assess the support needed by families and also the need for systemic outreach activities for our English learner families. We will establish a work group to review those results and develop a plan to increase the engagement of English learner families as well as to develop a communication plan. ACPS will create a best practice guide for administrators on the scheduling of special education and general education teachers to allow for effective co-planning and co-teaching. And finally, we will expand the MTSS social emotional learning offerings with additional social emotional learning coaches and additional school counselor positions to become more aligned with the ASCA ratio of 250 students to 1 school counselor. Mrs. Matheny is with us if you have questions on Pillar 4, resources to ensure all students are successful. Almost done. Pillar 5, governance and accountability. ACPS will identify teams for each blueprint pillar, including chairs and stakeholders that represent our demographic. We will provide quality control and project management for the systemic blueprint effort. We will ensure stakeholder engagement and feedback. We will ensure the timely completion, quality, and submission of a seamless blueprint implementation plan and monitor the implementation and progress of the plan by incorporating something. I'm not sure what. Mr. McKenzie is here tonight if you have questions about Pillar 5, governance and accountability. Finally, if you have overall plan questions, we will be glad to address those. And I believe, Mr. Blank, did you want to say a few words about our plan?
Yeah, yes, this evening, under new business, we'll be voting on the plan so that we can move forward. And again, it's a living document, so we'll make changes as we move forward. As you can see, this is just the first phase. There's another phase that's over 10 years. But we wanted to make sure the board, if you had any questions, we wanted to be specific tonight about what our pillar chairs, with the work that they've done, along with our pillar coordinator. I want to acknowledge also Dr. Main. This has been a huge lift between Dr. Main and our pillar chairs. Along with everything else that we've been doing, staff has tackled this and done an extremely great job with this. As we move forward, we'll be submitting it March 15th. So tonight it'll be under new business. So I wanted to pause to see if there are any questions before we get to new business later on in our meeting.
Any questions? Thank you, Dr. May. Appreciate it. I agree with Mr. Blank. It is a heavy lift. We appreciate all your work. Thank you. Next on the agenda is MCAP testing update. Ms. Simpson?
Good evening. Would like to present, as we now have results from spring 2022 that have come in, and just a brief overview to kind of show you where we're at. To give you an idea, remember we had a fall assessment that was actually the delayed from, that was in 2021, that was delayed from the spring 21. And pre-COVID, we were very proud of all of our results. We were above the state average at that point in 14 of 17 tested areas, which we look to get back to that, where as you'll see in a few minutes, we're on track to get back to that or surpass that. What I note that is above the state average in 14 of 17, being a county of higher poverty and high in students with special needs. It was actually we were very proud of that accomplishment at that point. So I'll take you from there, and then we had the fall assessment, which was used, it was an abbreviated assessment and was more used as a diagnostic kind of to let us see the beat of where we were. They did provide results though, and it was crushing when we saw at that point that we were only above the state average at 1. So what studies have shown though is that counties of higher poverty and with students of special needs, they were hit harder without the in-person instruction. And we knew that. So we knew that we have a lot of gains in coming back. So I say that just to kind of bring you up to speed of where we were and what we knew we needed to tackle at that point. So we now have this slide that you'll see, and what's in front of you are our English language arts results. And at this point, ACPS now has a proficiency rate higher than the state average in ELA 4, 5, and 8. We're also above the state average in science 5. Not sure why I put that on the English slide, but it's there. But anyway, and take note that if we're not above the state average, we're very close in numerous other grade levels there for English language arts. We also we have a proficiency rate higher than the state average in math 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the math scores across the state did not bounce back quite as quickly as the English did. That was put out by the State Department. We knew that. We're kind of in line, just right along with that. We're not worse and we're not better than that. But we think in doing kind of an analysis, and we work with the schools in like a root cause, that math being outside of the classroom, the virtual learning took a harder hit on math. It's harder to teach math online than it was some of the English skills. Some of the English skills flow together a little better from grade level to grade level. And so we expected that the bounce back would take a little longer in math. And I put in the notes here that the Math 8 results look incredibly low, but it is to be noted that about 35% of our 8th graders actually take Algebra 1 and some of them even take geometry at the middle school level. So they're not included in the Math 8 results. They're actually included in the algebra and the geometry results. That is a lot of, maybe 35% of our top 8th graders not taking that Math 8 is going to make that test just look a little bit lower there. Once again, noted where we're not with the state average. In some of the areas, we are very close. One thing in analyzing a lot of the data, we will be getting back to our school improvement plans. I work with all of the principals from elementary through secondary to look and analyze where their strengths are, first of all, to continue building upon those, and then where are the areas that we can dig in and need to make the largest difference. And in that, we'll get back to the root cause analysis, having them analyze per school with their teams, the 5 whys of what's going on in their schools. One thing when I was looking at the data, and I'll go to the next slide to say, it's hard to compare to 2019, but pre-COVID, we were at that point, there were 5 different proficiency levels. And then when we came back and we had that abbreviated fall, they went to 3. It was a shorter test, so that was hard to compare. And now the spring results that come out and moving forward, we've landed on 4 levels of proficiency, not we as a county, the whole state. And so you can see when you hear the terminology, beginning learner is level 1, developing level 2, proficient learner, and level 4 will be identified as a distinguished learner. Level 3 and 4 is what we consider as a proficiency, though, proficiency or above. It's worth noting that many of the students in Allegany County that didn't achieve proficiency of a level 3 were at a level 2 and very close. So that's encouraging that we look at the spring testing season actually coming upon us very quickly, that we look that we'll be moving, now that we're back in school an additional year, moving a lot of those 2s into the proficiency level 3 or even distinguished learners. High school students must obtain proficiency in ELA 10 and a math assessment at the high school level in order to be considered college and career ready. We want to continue to give them opportunity to be college and career ready, so when they don't obtain that, we will be reassessing them now. That is a shift of what we never used to do. They used to do bridge projects to get that graduation requirement. I think the scores will continue to improve also because there's meaning to them now. As they were coming back, it was a participation. And students at the middle and the high school level pretty much knew this, that we just have to sit and take this for graduation. But now that it's attached and they are identified as CCR, college and career ready, then I think we'll see that make a big difference as well. We'll continue to work with the schools in every way possible to support students' needs in order to reduce the gap between specific subgroups. I look at that and try to see where are our largest gaps and work with the principals and their teams. We'll continue to offer students additional learning opportunities, including tutoring, after-school credit recovery, and summer programs. In addition, I'll say that at the end of February, the schools will be receiving an evidence item analysis. That's one thing we dig into that actually shows all of the items and which items we scored well on and so it gives us a lot of really deep information as far as knowing where we need to do our work. And then the beginning of March, students will actually have their individual student report coming home that the state provides to us. And so parents will be getting those reports in March from the 2022. I know it seems very lagged there in receiving it, but we just have received it from the State Department. In March, also, the MSDE will be updating and getting back to the Maryland State Report Card, where all of the counties and the schools are noted on the Maryland Report Card site. So there will be a lot of information coming out next month for that. So I'll stop there. Let's see if you have any questions regarding any of the information or what we're doing as far as moving forward.
Yeah, I have not a question, but a statement also. The scores last spring, just so everybody understands, they had to be embargoed until now. So for us to be able to do a deep dive and look for the root cause analysis, now is when we're starting that and they had to do it that way because, correct me if I'm wrong, but because it was the test that they're going with now, they had to do that this year. This spring, when we take the exam, my understanding is that we'll get those results before the school year is over, perhaps, or at least in June, hopefully sooner than that. My point is that allows our professionals that are face-to-face with the students, when they can do the root cause analysis and have an entire year. Granted, we're taking the gloves off and we're doing that right now. Our staff's working diligently to get prepared for the spring test. But we'll have an entire year next year. So I think that's important that we have that data right in the beginning next year. So that's
Yes.
correct, right?
That is correct, Mr. Blank, and thanks for bringing that point up. One of the things, the reason that the data took so long, even longer than usual, to get to the counties was they were new tests. Everything was new. They had to go through score finding, setting standards. The questions and the content wasn't new, but the tests themselves were new. So that's why it took so long. And yes, the turnaround is supposed to be very quickly. That what we hope, Dr. Caldwell and myself have spoken, that we hope as those scores come back very quickly, hopefully even before the end of the year, but that we'll have the summer, that the principals can even possibly bring in some teams and start to work with their teams and look at and analyze the data. And that makes a lot of sense for me on a timeline, as far as then we can start to implement it coming right back to school with the new school year.
Ms. Fraley?
So on the slide 3, where the geometry scores, can you explain why our geometry score appears to be so much less than the state, and what grade level that is that's taking the geometry test?
Yes, that's a great question. I should have addressed that. We didn't have a large number of students last year taking the geometry test. We actually are looking at that. Dr. Thompson and myself have had some conversations already, wondering why it is so low. A lot of our students some of our upper students were taking the geometry, but we didn't have a large population that were tested. So in saying that, anytime the population's lower, 1 or 2 students really moves that percentage a great deal. So we're anxious to get the item analysis, which I mentioned, to show if there's certain areas that we've completely, that we really need to focus on.
And then just as a follow-up, the goal then would be, when you do get that information and it's over the summer, it's trying to find those students that may need extra help. Does it go to the student level when you guys get the information? It goes
Yes.
to the student level, right?
It absolutely goes to the student level. This year we've actually, there's a layer added to where we can even see attached to teacher names, that we can see which teachers are performing well with their students, and then hopefully use some of the skills that they use in their classroom and the strategies. But this year coming up, we'll have a greater number of students taking geometry because of that CCR standard. So all of your high school students that took Algebra 1 last year and did not meet proficiency, they're going to be retesting. And instead of retesting them in algebra over and over when they've moved away from that content, that from student surveys in the past was stressful to them. They had to go back and take an Algebra 1 test, and they were sitting in geometry. So instead, we now are allowed to test them in the content that they sit in. So the students that didn't pass Algebra 1 as proficient last year will test geometry this year. Unfortunately, we have a large number that we'll be testing, but it will give us more data to look at and be able to, and we can drill clear down to per student and even all of the questions, which questions students got correct and incorrect. You want numbers? I have numbers. All of them that you want. Anyone
Any other
else?
questions? Thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you coming. Okay, Mr. McKenzie, it's your time. We have a fiscal 2024 state aid report from Mr. Larry McKenzie.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief this evening. But what you have in front of you, we're going to talk about a couple of different things. Obviously, we want to talk about what our state aid, the draft state aid looks like at this point in time, as well as some budget considerations. As we've talked in the past, these are the categories that we receive our state aid in. So foundation programs are basically the per pupil aid that we receive for all students. Transportation grants represent a certain amount per pupil, as well as an allocation for any special needs student transportation as well. Compensatory education represents free and reduced meal eligible students. English learners are those students who utilize English as a second language. Of course, special education is are students who require some additional services. The guaranteed tax base, we're one of 8 districts that receive additional funds relative to that category. The blueprint, as we've talked about in the past, there's the transition grant, monies available for college and career readiness, concentration of poverty, TSI, pre-K, as well as the teacher salary career ladders. Okay. It's important to recognize, and I'll give everyone kind of a brief history on state aid and how it's derived. Our state aid is based upon an inverse, we're funded inversely compared to our wealth. So districts who are wealthy districts will receive less state aid than a district that is maybe further down on the wealth scale. So there's an inverse funding from the state. So currently, Allegany County is 21st in wealth, so we do receive quite a bit of our funding from the state. The wealth formula takes into account 50% of personal property, 100% of net taxable income, and 40% of the real property base. So those are the measures that the state utilizes to look at each district's wealth. Okay, we did have a significant increase in our wealth this year, which did somewhat impact our state aid. We'll talk about that shortly. The state average increase was a little over 4%. Not only do we look at wealth in terms of total wealth, but we're also looking at wealth in terms of on a per pupil basis. Okay, so this year actually we did see a slight increase in enrollments, 0.5 of 1% to be exact, or 37.5 students. We did see a significant increase as well in students who qualify for free and reduced meals, 4,729 this year compared to 3,818 last year. That's a significant increase, a 23.9% increase. The state average actually increased at 34.2%. And part of that is the composition of what is included for students in free and reduced meal categories. So that's been a recently hot topic at a lot of state meetings in Blueprint, because this particular measure went up significantly across all the districts. So the increased funding that's going to require at the state level has been talked about quite a bit this session. The number of special education students increased by 2.2%, or 26 students to 1,199. And then overall, as I said, we look at wealth on a per pupil basis, so there was an increase as well at the state level in the number of students of 0.5%, or 4,153.75 additional students. This shows the different comparative categories of aid. You can see some of the categories increased, some of them decreased based upon different factors in wealth. It could be the number of students, those types of things. But what I want to focus on at the end of the day, if the governor's budget is approved as submitted, we will see about a $200,000 increase in our aid this year, or 0.22%. Then this just shows graphically the different components of our aid. Obviously, foundation being the largest piece. Some of the things that we're working through in terms of budget considerations, as we just heard, COVID has impacted our learning, and how we're trying to continue to reduce those gaps. And certainly, we use quite a bit of CARES funding that we have remaining to kind of help close those gaps with summer school, tutoring, those types of things. Certainly, the Blueprint legislation continues to loom large in the state. As we also discussed that quite a bit earlier as well today, and those requirements. And then lastly, there's several bills that not only the PASAM group but the MABE group continue to monitor for us, as they could have significant impacts to the system as a whole. So, does anyone have any questions about the state aid?
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Moving to hearing of constituents, we had one person, Mr. Kevin Bradlin, that signed up, but I don't see him around, so I'm assuming he's not here. So moving on. In the new business, we need to vote to approve the Blueprint report for March 15th, 2023. So I'll need a motion.
I make a motion to approve the Blueprint report that was presented and is due March 15th, 2023.
Ms. Bender made the motion. Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Buckley. Any further discussion on the Blueprint? Not hearing any. All those in favor, raise your hand. Approved unanimously. We need to vote to meet in executive session on March 14th, 2023 as necessary. Do I hear a motion on that?
So moved.
Dr. Bond made the motion.
Second.
Ms. Fraley, second. All those in favor? Motion carried. Student board member is not here this evening. Any board member updates? No board member updates. We have one more thing I need a motion on.
Move to adjourn.
Dr. Bond moves to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Ms. Bender, all those in favor? Go ahead.